Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Bioinformatics Showcase, Midwest Bioinformatics Showcase seminar. Um, Today's speaker is Feihong Xu, a PhD candidate in the Interdisciplinary Biological Sciences program at Northwestern University, where she is advised by Dr. Amaral. Her thesis explores machine learning modules for multimodal healthcare informatics, which we will hear about today in her talk titled, To What Extent Do Deep Neural Networks Learn the Same Thing? Feihong previously completed a master's in quantitative and systems biology, also from Northwestern, and a bachelor's of science from Sun Yat-sen University in Guangzhou, China. Feihong has been both an organizer and a speaker for the Northwestern Institute of Complex Systems Data Science Nights, which is a fun thing to check out if you are at Northwestern. And last year also received the Rappaport Award for Research Excellence. We are so excited to have her here today to speak. Please, Feihong, take it away.
Thank you for the nice introduction. Let me share my screen here. Can everyone see the slides okay? Oh, okay. I'm happy to share my research on uh, comparing neural networks and to understand a bit more of what they are learning. So essentially, AI is a hot topic here, and we see a lot of opportunities that maybe AI can be used in biomedical settings. But it is also known that AI models can fail unexpectedly in scenarios that we don't know why it failed. For example, if we train a neural network on a chest X-ray images, it can work pretty well in one hospital, but turns out cannot generalize to other hospitals because when we look closer, those networks are are looking at not the lung region to identify pneumonia, but the corner region where the hospital tokens levels are at. And for many years, people have been looking at how do we open the black box, and the silencing map method is one route that initially reveals such a problem, but now after many years, people have made progress one way or another. Now we can make the neural network look at the lung region. But is this sufficient? Will For one, the silencing method can only tells you uh, uh, it's best where the neural network is looking at, but doesn't say how the neural network is using that information. For example, here, this is the silencing map for a neural network classifies this figure, which is a dog to be a flute instrument. And it's look at pretty much the correct region, but still, this doesn't tell us why the neural network makes the wrong classification. And regarding the silencing methods, there's a nice benchmarking study where they gradually shuffled the neural network from the output layer to the input layer. So essentially, when so goes from the left to right along the x-axis, the neural network is shuffled more and more until at the very right end is essentially random initialization of two random neural networks. And if these silencing heat maps are telling us something, we'd expect that the correlation of silencing heat maps should drop to around chance for this random shuffled neural networks. But we see that for a lot of such silencing methods, there's a spurious signal that this turns out to be correlated to the data, but not so much about the models themselves. So now we have a lot of AI model architectures from CNN to transformer large language models, and we have many training strategies, optimizer algorithms, uh, and also other tricks that's supposed to improve the training process and get better models. But given a specific task, we still don't know which model to use, what data, how much data is needed to train the model, and how to train the model. And even we have a model at hand, we don't know where it will work or where it will fail. One way out, I think, is to instead do cross-model meta-analysis. Uh, if we look at many models together, and if we have a way to characterize the distance or similarity between models, we can then project each model as a data point in this latent space. This way, we can identify clusters of models and representations of model prototypes. Like we can know, oh, maybe there are three classes of models that each have different property in what they learn and in which scenario they are supposed to be working. And when we have a new model, we can then project onto this latent space, and this can tell us the property of a given new model. Now, when it comes to model similarity, there are different notions, and we can compare the models at different level. The most straightforward one would be we look at how two models behave with respect to their functionality. So if we feed the neural networks with the same set of inputs, we want to compare how the outputs are similar or dissimilar to each other. We can also compare the representational similarity of two models, which means given a certain input as the intermediate layer, what are the internal representation or activation values of the model reacting to the same input. And we can also compare the models in terms of their parameter space. Although functional similarity sounds straightforward and is probably the easiest one of the three, there are still some nuances. So we can compare the functionality of two models in terms of their aggregated statistics like accuracy. So maybe if two models are achieving the same level of accuracy, then they are similar to each other. Or we can look at the hard classification of the two models. So whether they are classifying the same input as the same levels or classes. Or we can look more into the soft prediction distributions, like the probability distributions, or if we go one step further, the actual largest values of the model. Uh, when we think of it, there are evidences that if we only consider the clean accuracy, so the accuracy on clean test images, that's probably not enough, because we see that some models can achieve very high accuracy on clean images, and that would suggest a high similarity. But when we probe the model with different perturbations, those models can have vastly different behavior that cannot be captured with just clean accuracy. But then, how many and what kind of corruptions do we need to evaluate those models on? And when we think of probing the model with more and more different corruptions, that also means more computational power needed. So like how like different levels of functional similarity that we are probing can reveal different aspects of the model. Uh, and regarding, so let's switch gears now. Let's think of the representational similarity. So there have been many metrics proposed to compare internal representations, which means the activation value uh, uh, of neural networks with respect to the same set of input. And there is just very recently our benchmarking paper that compares like more than 20 different representational similarity metrics. Uh, and so when it comes to benchmarking such metrics, we one desired property of such metric is that we wanted to reflect the functional behavior of the models. So such benchmark studies usually use the correlation between representational similarity metric to functional similarity metric as a way to select a better representational metric. So in other words, if a metric is more correlated with functional similarity, we think this method is better or is working. Now, since I'm concerned with the vision tasks, so we only so now I'm showing in vision tasks how these different representational similarity metric compare. And if we look at the correlation to the difference of accuracy, we see these three metrics that's like significantly correlated with accuracy. And if we also consider the correlation to the junction channel divergence of the probability scores, then CKA stands out as the only one that's correlated to both accuracy and the probability distribution score. Now I will talk a bit more about the CKA because later my weight space metric is based on CKA. So CKA is proposed as a way to compare the internal representations from neural networks. And the representation is of the shape n by p, where n represents the number of input we probe the model, while p means the number of neurons at a certain intermediate layer. And the first step of CKA is to build so-called kernel matrices, which essentially measures how similar for different samples are represented uh, for each model. And usually people use the linear kernel. And the second step is to compute intuitively the cosine similarity between two kernel matrices. And the intuition is, do the two models agree on which inputs are similar to each other? And most people use, so CK with a linear kernel is the most used form, which reduced to the RV coefficient. And besides function and representation, we can also compare the neural network in terms of their parameters, their weights, that's tuned during the training process. Or if we think of what represents a learned knowledge of those neural networks, that will be the weights. And there are studies shows that the properties of weight matrices is highly correlated and indicate neural network functionality. So essentially, for a random initialized neural network, based on the random metric theory, the eigen values of such weight matrices should follow a semicircle shape, while people find that for highly trained neural networks, the eigenvalues follow a heavy tail distribution. But how are we going to compare weight matrices? Because we cannot just naively say we subtract one weight matrix from another because there is not a one-to-one correspondence of neurons in the intermediate layer. So for example, if we shuffle these two neurons at one hidden layer, along with their input and output weights, then the neural network is of the same underlying function, but the weight matrix would be different. So we need with a similarity matrix that account for such invariance. And Wang et al. Proposed such chain weight normalization operator that remains invariant under such neuron shuffling. Uh, So the idea is we want to come up with a similarity metric that compares weight matrices, but at the same time account for the differences in weight matrices that actually represent the same functionality. Um, uh, a, a more recent paper uh, uh, introduces the concept of intertwiner group, which intuitively is the function preserving transformations for a certain neural network. So under such weight transformation, the neural network functionality would remain exactly the same. Uh, I proposed WCKA, which is the CKA on weight matrices. The goal is to compare neural networks directly in weight space while respect weight space symmetries. And I'll use the chain weight product as a kernel function and further apply CKA using such kernel function. And this metric has potentially several advantages. First, it's input agnostic. So unlike functional or representational metric, this weight similarity metric doesn't depend on any input props we're using. Also, it is potentially more stable and generalizable. So uh, for each pair of models, we don't need to try different images, and that would each output a different score. But as long as the weight parameters are the same, we only need to compare two models once. And also it has the nice theoretical so it has the nice property to respect the anti-tunnel group transformation that's grounded in theory. So we first calibrated so both my metric, the WCKA, and several representational similarity metrics using kind of ground truth random neural networks, which are just initialized randomly. So those neural networks are not trained, and highly similar neural networks, which are the neural networks trained for adjacent number of epochs. So, for example, the two neural networks are checkpoints from say 99 epochs versus 100 epochs. So, and after the training converges, so those two neural networks are are highly similar, and we can see that these other representational similarity metrics, the properties and CKA, kind of you still have this spurious signal even for random neural networks. Um, and depending on which input you use, there's a large variance there. And the DCKA is a more recent metric that specifically account for the spurious correlation introduced by the data. And we see that indeed the mean is around zero, which is good, but this metric also has negative values, which is hard to interpret. Like what are say negative 0.2 similarity metric mean in terms of comparison, while my metric exhibits a better behavior in separating random versus highly similar neural networks. We conducted a more comprehensive experiments to benchmark and characterize our weight space similarity matrix, the WCKA. So we probe two neural networks that are trained with a different training strategy and are of different architectures. Also initialized randomly and trained for different number of epochs. And we probe those networks with both clean test images and images of different corruptions or adversarial attacks. And we compare their similarity in weight space and also in terms of their functionality. And we see how correlated the two aspects are. Here's the results. So the y-axis is the prediction similarity. So it's the ratio of same predictions over total number of input images. And the x-axis represents the similarity value of different representational similarity metrics and the WCKA. We can see that when the task is easier, so essentially if we keep everything the same, but only vary the number of epochs, and essentially those checkpoints are from a single training trajectory, all the metrics works pretty well and can indicate a functional similarity. However, for more difficult settings, especially when we vary the architecture and training strategy of these neural networks, our metric works better or are more correlated or reflects more of the model functionality than other metrics. So above experiments are done using kind of toy dataset. So they amnest handwritten digits and conducted on small fully connected neural networks. We are going to see to what extent can our metric generalize to more large scale models and more difficult tasks. And now our setup is a large scale bottleneck multi-layer perceptron on ImageNet. This is the architecture of one bottleneck blocks. And this consists of both layer normalization and the residual connection. And uh, uh, and we train such people have trained such scaled MLP on a large general image dataset, the ImageNet, 21,000. And so these models are pre-trained using the ImageNet 21K, which is like really big, contains 14 million images. And we fine-tune such models on or smaller, more curated dataset ImageNet 1K. And we also probe the functionality of such models using ImageNet V2, which is collected using the same protocol as the ImageNet 1K, but collected years later, which can represent our out of distribution dataset. And ImageNet A, which is selected to be the image to include images that's difficult for ImageNet 21K trained models, which represent a natural adversarial dataset, and also ImageNet C, which contains 19 types of different corruptions, which of the original ImageNet. And we can see that WCKA reveals the pre-training and fine-tuning dynamics. So the x-axis represents the number of training uh, pre-training epochs on the ImageNet 21K of one model, and y-axis is the pre-training number of epochs of the other model. We can see that the similarity is the highest along the diagonal, and as we train the model for more number of epochs, and as the learning kind of converge, the model are more similar to each other. And if we go from the diagonal to, so if we go away from the diagonal, we see that as the distance uh, uh, of the number of training epochs increase between the two models, the model similarity revealed by WCKA also decrease. We see similar pattern for fine-tuning models. So these are comparing two models that's fine-tuned from the same checkpoints for different number of epochs on ImageNet 1K. And again, we see that along the diagonal, and as the fine-tuning saturate, models are more and more similar, while they are dissimilar when there's a big difference in the fine-tuning epochs and when the learning stage is kind of earlier. Now I'm working with our lab mate Cameron on the WCKA on convolutional neural networks. So we essentially have deep and shallow convolutional networks, and we have two different tasks. One are easier a one-channel handwritten digit dataset. Another is safer turn, which is colored images. And we're comparing the models across architectures, a number of epochs, and training tasks. Also, I'm trying to compare real world real world models trained for diagnosing chest X-ray images. So these are models trained on chest X-ray images for 60,000 of patients, and each chest X-ray image is paired with a radiology note that can then be analyzed by this expert labeler to extract different pulmonary pathologies. And right now we are training the ResNet models with different training strategies, or using pre-trained or training from scratch strategies, and different number of training epochs. And we're trying to see how how uh, neural networks are trained to diagnose pulmonary diseases based on chest X-ray images compared with each other, and whether the similarity of such models may be higher or lower compared with like more standard or curated general purpose image classification task like we see on ImageNet or Cipherton. With that, I wanna thank my advisor and my funding resources and my wonderful collaborators that enables my research. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. You're welcome to ask a question in the chat if you'd like to type it out and I'll read them. You're also welcome to come off mute and ask your question directly. Either way. I can start us off. So you talked a little bit about the sort of larger experiment and bigger data sets that you're starting with the ImageNet data, and then comparing that a little bit to uh, when you're using something that is more specific to this case of like what we want to do is diagnose like lung cancers or tumors or things like that. I imagine both the tools being used and the like scale of data is quite different between the two. Are you seeing that your metric for similarity between models behaves as expected once you transition to a much more like targeted tool and data set as it did when you are working with the larger ImageNet data?
Well, right now so it's ongoing research, and indeed, the data, the task is super different. But in terms of the model architecture, they can be similar. So ResNet, for example, is used for both ImageNet classification, and it's being transferred to classifying chest X-ray images. And there are, of course, like more specialized, customized models that's like specific for chest X-ray images. Uh, and we expect like the level of similarity would be different in these two cases. And now, like my hypothesis is that the similarity of models for chest X-ray image classification would be lower because so those tasks are a lot more difficult. Um, and and we and at current stage models trained for chest X-ray image diagnosis cannot achieve as high accuracy as for the ImageNet. And so that may represent like those models on chest X-ray image classification are not like as well trained or has not converged based on like a current so if we just directly transfer the model architecture and training strategies. And another hypothesis is that right now there are models that's more customized or introduce like interoperability layers, like a prototype layers that's more tailored for medical image classification tasks. We suspect that those models should be more similar to each other because um, with kind of more restraint or regularization, those models like should be learning kind of more similar aspects from the image. But we will see. I'm excited to see how different scenarios compare.
Thank you. Yes, um, sort of maybe a sort of similar vein. When you think about the audience for your research or like the applications for some of this work, um, are you hoping this lands in front of people who are designing or researching the actual like tools and models that they're using, or are you hoping that some of this makes it all the way to the scale of like if a hospital or an institution is deciding about, purchasing an enterprise tool, do they have the right way to evaluate between them?
Yeah, I'd say, well, ideally, both. So I personally think, that right now the field of computer science, is kind of going in a different route that's like if some changes can be made, that will be more helpful for practitioners and for field specific research. So, for example, um, computer science or AI conferences, they cares less about the specific data and problem, but just kind of benchmarking on some benchmarking data set and try to improve the leaderboard metrics. And that will but without uh, the specific data and question in mind, that's not super helpful for translation. And also, we want to incorporate domain knowledge when it comes to biomedical research. Um, and I view my research as like a connecting the machine learning, computer science, uh, with the biology and biomedicine, uh, so that I can like a better adapt the model or uh, customize the model for real world translation.
Thank you so much. I'm not seeing a lot of questions in the chat or in the audience, so I'll give it another minute. But if you have anything you'd like us to touch on, please either come off mute or write it down. Mostly just a lot of thanks. Okay, perfect. Well, enjoy the rest of your Friday, everyone. Thanks for spending the morning with us. We do not have a seminar next week, but then we have four more after that. So hope to see some of you or all of you again. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
one
Have a
more
good
round of
rest of
applause.
your day.